Special episode of Locked On UCLA today. We got Isaac Schade of Locked On College Basketball. Are the Bruins ranked too high, too low? And will they actually surpass expectations in 2025 to 2026? All that and more on Locked On UCLA and Locked On College Basketball Crossover Edition.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Locked On UCLA and Locked On College Basketball Crossover. I'm Zach Anderson-Yoxsimer of Locked On UCLA. We've got Isaac Schade, who's seemingly everything locked on when it comes to college basketball, right? Big-time March Madness coverage everywhere. Best friends with some top-tier players on both the men's and the women's sides, it seems like, right, Isaac, at this point, after all that coverage you had in March into April. But right now, we're diving a little deeper into UCLA's offseason, what they did, what they didn't do, and also, hey, what was that first year in the Big Ten like? So, Isaac, I know you and Andy Patton of Locked On College Basketball, very different ideas of what the Bruins will be. I mean, like, as completely different as it gets for what UCLA will be next season. I'm not sure if it's the regional bias, reverse, right? Normally guys on the West Coast give love to the West Coast. Nope, it's reverse. So kind of detail what you think about UCLA, and we can talk about what Andy's rankings are in your off-season, preseason top 25.
It's so funny, Yox. So for those who don't know, we did a way too early top 25, pretty much right after the NCAA championship ended. I had UCLA fourth. Andy had them unranked. And the truth is probably a little bit of a Goldilocks situation, somewhere just right in the middle of those two things. And what's also interesting, as you all are listening to or watching this, literally yesterday on Monday's show, June 2nd, we did a post-draft withdrawal update of our rankings. As we record this, though, I haven't done my rankings for that. So I don't know where I'm going to land with UCLA. And now that we've seen some of the news of who's coming back, literally a little bit before we recorded this, guys like Alex Condon coming back, Axel Lendenborg earlier on when we recorded this on Tuesday, May 27th, that Milo Suzanne is coming back to Houston. And so I got to rejigger everything, Yox, but I think even when the dust settles, I'm still going to have UCLA as at least a top 10 team. And I think part of that is I believed in what was already coming back in guys like Tyler Bilodeau and Eric Daly and Sky Clark. But you add Donovan Dent into this mix, and I know other pieces as well, but he's so insanely good. But Yox, I'm curious to get your take on this because he seems like a weird fit for a Mick Cronin team, for a Mick Cronin style with everything Dent does. But I think he's just such a strong player that he's going to be willing to fit into that team culture, that even if his 20-ish points a game drop down to 15 or 16 at the pace UCLA plays, I think it's still going to work when you mix in all that and some of the other guys coming in like a Xavier Booker and like a Jamar Brown from Kansas City, et cetera. And so I really think that if UCLA is going to do it, this year is a year that makes sense to be a really strong Big Ten team.
Yeah, UCLA, and to remind everybody with those rankings, UCLA had already secured the commitment of Donovan Dent by the time you guys had ranked, even when the national championship had already been played, which is crazy about this transfer portal era. UCLA had a top transfer, and we weren't even done with the most recent season. But now I've started to see updated lists of various sources, and you bring in Donovan Dent. That's huge. I think where everybody's so confused and what I've talked about in early April, now leading on to where we are end of May heading into June, people aren't upset that the Bruins got the guard. I think Donovan Dent is, a unique talent and has been compared to the likes of Tiger Campbell, and I think is so much better than Tiger Campbell. Not that Tiger was bad or great. He does so much more than Tiger Campbell. Defensively, I think can shoot much better. He can do it all and that much more. You just only get 1 year of him and you need him to click right away with Mick Cronin, which isn't always a guarantee, but you need him to click right away, and I think that will happen. It's Adamada leaving, which was that kind of X factor at the center position. When he played for UCLA last year, there was a clear increase of just efficiency on offense, a different weapon defensively, just a different body out there that UCLA is not going to have this season, which makes them so fascinating that despite Mick Cronin's fascination with a small ball five or not a traditional five. I think that's the bigger question mark going to next year for Donovan Dent, though. I've kind of talked about it on this Locked On UCLA podcast before. He can shoot, he can score, he can defend blocking shots, and he's a guard. He can block shots, he can steal the ball, he does it all. He gets to the free throw line, which was a bugaboo for the Bruins last year. He can get there and make his free throws. So the guy you want to have the ball in his hand can do everything. It's not like he's going to go score and dominate and ball hog. His numbers will, I think, regress in terms of points per game a little bit, I think, and that won't be a bad thing. But UCLA has decent shooters around him to be a successful offense that with his competitiveness and his willingness to come home, he's here on a mission and to take UCLA to the next step.
What, Yax, you talked about him and, some Sky Clarkiness, some Tiger Campbelliness. I Freudianly said Sky Clark there because I'm curious how you think Dent and Clark are going to work together, because I'm assuming unless something wacky happens, that's your starting backcourt. How do you see them kind of taking turns, like sharing playmaking duties and scoring duties? How do you see that playing out?
I think by the end of the season, it was pretty clear Cronin was trying to emphasize this guy, hey, we need you to shoot the basketball. And when they lost to Tennessee, Sky Clark was shooting the ball really well in that game in the second round of the NCAA tournament. He just wasn't on the court because UCLA was in terrible foul trouble. Sky Clark, one of them, which is why I went on my epic rant post-game about, hey, they weren't helped out early in that game, but Tennessee just swarmed them defensively. So I think the hope is take that load off of Sky Clark to bring the ball up. And as much as the Bruins gave so much time to Dylan Andrews to develop, it was clear that I think Sky Clark handled the ball a little bit better. Yeah, Dylan Andrews, is on to a different place via the transfer portal, like most of any college athlete is this day. And the Bruins have a much better ball handler, and Clark can focus on when he gets the ball, he's a playmaker versus running an offense. So I think that's where the shift will be. Clark, shoot the ball, score the ball. Don't run the offense. When we need you to, you can. And we've got a young kid in the backcourt like Trent Perry, who is a fascinating sophomore prospect for UCLA. Different. He's bigger, I think, and a little different than Sebastian Mack was heading into a sophomore, but Trent Perry could be a unique X factor. Not going to start over Clark or Dent. No. But if one of them's in foul trouble, then maybe he could affect something. But Clark, I think, will mostly be let's score, let's shoot the basketball. And Dent is like, I can just do it all. Just tell me what I need to do today, and he'll do it. Yeah.
Well, and Yax, I love that you mentioned Sebastian Mack because I always loved like the bulldogginess he would bring to UCLA. And like, who is that kind of guard? Like, is that Dent coming in? Do you think he brings that edge that it felt always to me like Mack would bring to the lineup?
I think Dent is the guy that's supposed to have that edge. I mean, Dent dominated UCLA. It's not like he completely dominated when New Mexico beat UCLA in November of 2020. What, 3 now? I guess 4. So. 2024. I'm getting the years confused. But he also had a bunch of turnovers. So Mick Cronin isn't necessarily going to like those numbers, but his assist-to-turnover ratio is still very, very good. He brings Dylan Andrews. He brings the scoring aspect of a Sky Clark from 3 and shooting while bringing that grinded out mentality, that dog mentality you're talking about of Mac. And he's all that in one, in my mind. And Mac couldn't shoot the ball. Like, he honestly couldn't shoot the ball that well with consistency. And there was times when UCLA played North Carolina in the CBS Sports Classic, you knew where the ball was going. You knew what was going to happen. Mac was going to take the basketball and attack the rack. And the Mac attack became too predictable when they did it against, I forget, Minnesota at the end of the season, and they blew a big lead. That's where Mick Cronin would lean on. And I think Dent can do so many things. Step back, hit a shot, get the foul, do all the things Mac can do, but have more elements to his game. Now, that's a lot of pressure to put on a guy, but he's so good, you're paying him close to he's getting close to $3 million in NIL, right? He's getting a lot of money. So that's the expectation. You get a 1 year out of Dent, he's doing all these things, and that's why you saw 2, 3, 4 of those guys all head to the portal.
We've talked so much here about the backcourt, which I'm really curious to start thinking through who is the best backcourt in the Big Ten. Like, this UCLA backcourt's got to be up there with Purdue, right? Obviously, that's going to be an interesting dynamic for the conference this year. But as you said, there is a lot of thought towards the front court too, because it feels like pretty much a no-brainer that it is a Dent Clark starting backcourt. And then like the baseline to me, I guess, Yox, the way I would say it is it feels like it's Daly, Bilodeau, Booker from 3, 4, and 5. Would you agree with that, or would you push back and give me somebody else in the starting 5?
I think we're all set on what the starting 4 is. It's Clark, Dent, it's Daly, it's Bilodeau. We know those are the 4. If that doesn't happen and they're all healthy, I would be completely shocked. Completely shocked. And I think Eric Daly Jr. at a UCLA, I think it was an NIL event, it was reported, he came out and said, we're moving me to the 3. What Daly himself said, I'm going to move to the 3. That's more of a natural spot, which is interesting because Bilodeau can't, I think, make that shift. He can go 5 to 4, but he can't go to the 3. Daly would be an undersized 5. I think plays better and is a good matchup as an offensive 3. Might be a step slower defensively at the 3 for Cronin's liking. So I'm wondering if, what that's going to look like. But I think Booker at the 5, which is a lot of pressure to put on a guy who didn't have the most successful seasons and runs at Michigan State, but he's going to get a lot of time at UCLA. It's just the 5 spot, which kind of was the question mark last year. Who's going to step up? And there's no Adai Mara.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was about to say, is like that would feel like the obvious place you go. So somebody's really going to have to step up there to match what's happening. Because those 1 through 4 positions, as you said, Yox, man, I feel great about that. Just got to have a center step up and do work.
And I mean, UCLA went to the Final Four with Cody Riley as their big man. So, we will talk about what their projections are going to be in this next segment, kind of recap, finishing out the podcast, what we thought of UCLA's first year in the Big Ten. More next on our crossover edition of Locked On UCLA and Locked On College Basketball. Isaac, did you ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all your money go? Have you been dining out too much? Do you too much entertainment? Well, maybe you've lost track. I've lost track, but that's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances, because Monarch Money isn't just another budgeting app. It's complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. And the surprising insight for me was I started using Monarch and I'm like, wait a minute, how much am I spending on food delivery? How much am I spending on theme parks? Wait a minute, did their prices just increase? I just realized that the other day. I'm like, how much am I spending on my pass? It's upgraded like $15 per month. This is ridiculous. So now, as much as I love it, I budget smarter and I'm saving more. So take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. Cruising on, second segment, continuing on with this crossover edition. It's Zach from Locked On UCLA with Isaac of Locked On Everything, mostly Locked On Tar Heels, and Locked On College Basketball, which is where he's got that neutral hat today. Spencer says he's the neutral arbiter of college football. Are you the neutral arbiter of college basketball with Andy Patton?
I try to be. I love it because it's like, I'm passionate as a fan of a certain school, but then, dude, I just love college basketball so hard that I'm like all in on, like, I love these teams and players and bring it on and all the matter. Like, yes, I will own that crown and I will wear it gladly.
We love, if you're true, I'm not saying you specifically, but as true college basketball fans, we love the month of November just as much as we love March. It just gets more hype in March into April or in February. But November, when there's all these feast week tournaments, that is just as fun. It is just as fun. December can be a little dreadful, and we'll talk about UCLA pulling out of that CBS Sports Classic in a minute, so I don't really know what their non-conference will look like at this moment. But the Bruins, what are their projections going forward? I know you're very high on them. I'm in the middle. We talked about Andy having them a little bit lower. And this is all with the thought that Donovan Dent's coming to UCLA. We know that Adai Mara is not going to be there. So nothing's really changed for UCLA outside of other teams getting talented guys to withdraw from the NBA draft, or maybe a couple of teams in the Big Ten are nationally getting players from the transfer portal. Largely stayed the same. First, Isaac, what do you think, in your perspective, UCLA's ceiling and floor is?
Ceiling, I mean, why not a Big Ten championship, right? Like, outside of Purdue, I don't think
Michigan.
And Michigan, but I'm a bit lower on Michigan. Now, I had Yaxel not come back to school, definitely would have been like low on Michigan. But even still, I'm not convinced. I need to see it with Michigan. I'm not going to be able to buy the Kool-Aid in the offseason. If the product on the court turns out to be better than what I'm expecting, I will eat every bit of crow you feed me, my man, and anybody else. But for right now, I would have UCLA easily above Michigan. I'm just trying to think through if there's anybody else I would want. I mean, I will continue to have Purdue above UCLA. But outside of that, yes, a lot of people are going to put Michigan up there, but I think the ceiling is a Big Ten championship, regular season or tournament or both, whatever you want to have. And then I think Final Four would take something special, which I know feels weird with me having them fourth. But I think like a second weekend Elite Eight kind of run is the ceiling.
For me, I came on talking with you and Locked On College Basketball last year. I think I posted it here too. I said UCLA was a third weekend team. I was loud about it. I remember even the pregame host for UCLA on the radio was similar about their prospects because that's how much talent they brought in, had some guys coming back. And if maybe a Daimar wasn't as hurt and was a little healthier, and of course, there's been all these crazy rumors swirling around about why he left UCLA, which have been crazy, although college sports has been really crazy as to why guys have left nowadays. Maybe they could have had a better season, but in the end, UCLA needed a couple more pieces, and they, quite frankly, needed a Donovan Dent. They went out and got it. Now, they had to lose their starting center, or a projected starting center, or just maybe somebody in their closing five, which makes me want to temper my expectations. I don't know if they're top five. I know they'll be really good. I don't think they'll be outside the top 25 to start the season. That would be, I think, a bit of a ludicrous thought process there. I just, with what they brought in and Cronin's track record of having successful seasons with limited play from the big men or specific roles designed for his big men, even if it's not a Dembona, Cody Riley taking his team to the Final Four, right, or being a part of that Final Four team, it all comes down to guard play, shot making, and elite defense. And generally, UCLA has the elite defense. Can they have the shot making with what they had on the perimeter with Abilido, or if he's inside playing as the four? Daly, Clark shooting a lot more. He needs to shoot a lot more. And how much does Dent transform this team? I'm on the same wavelength as I'm not going to go as far as I did last year and say teasing a third weekend team. I would say Elite Eight, Sweet 16. But then the question is, if you fall below expectations, which you could argue last year, tying for a top four seed in the Big Ten tournament, having to use a tiebreaker, would that put Mick Cronin on the hot seat or the warm seat? What type of season do you think would that do? I know some UCLA fans are tired of his tirades. What is your thought from a more national perspective?
Yeah, I mean, Mick doesn't do himself any favors, man. And it's like I feel like the narrative nationally and probably locally too would be wildly different if he just wasn't so complaintative. I don't even know what word I'm looking for there all the time, but it's just like, now I love the sound bites and the whole Statue of Liberty thing and all that we got last year, right? Like, I think that's fun and it's good for content, but like, I'm just even trying to think like a team that performed at UCLA's level with a more agreeable coach, I think would just put things in, in a completely different viewpoint. So that in itself is part of it. I think like when you're at UCLA, you think back to Ben Howland, and he did what I thought was a very, very, very good job and then was politely shown the door despite it, right? And so it's not like Mick has lived up to that level of success on the floor. And so at some point, if you're not doing UCLA things, then you're going to be shown the UCLA door. And I don't think we're there, but as you said, like maybe there is some sort of, we're turning our seat warmer on in our car, but maybe not to like 1, 2, 3, 4, but you just hit that first button just because you need a little toast on your buns. I
think UCLA, obviously, whenever your program like UCLA is, Mick Cronin, he understands it. He gets it. I think it's pretty clear. It's not like he doesn't get it. Other than obviously him being loud to his players and, and to the fans and to the media, he will tell you what he thinks and will not hold back for the most part. We think he doesn't hold back. That'd be funny if he does. It's like the shadow of John Wooden is still over UCLA. And the thing is, I've read some of these books about John Wooden and the way he coached and the pyramid of success. And people will complain on the podcast, on the comment section, talking about the differences between the two coaches. They're almost antithetical. They are very different. Cronin will come out and F-bomb you all the way until you figure out how to get it done. And in a book, I've read pieces of like John Wooden's pyramid of success. He would never, and wrote down he would never do something like that. Obviously, years before Mick Cronin, this is never a slight necessarily, but they're so different that I think we're like, well, we had success that way. And Cronin, while he gets it and is just as caring, it comes about in a different way. And I did an episode early in the year in 2025 where I talked about Mick Cronin's teams almost always have immediate success right after he goes on a rampage to the media, to his team when it's clear everybody can hear it. Their team wins immediately. And about a week later, they went on that huge 7-game winning streak where they're on the West Coast. So I think that's part of the reason. And you bring up the Ben Howland thing. Yeah, that's a favorite part of my childhood was a 3 years Final Four run, which would be pretty tough to do outside of what UConn's done last couple of years. We haven't seen anything similar to that. Obviously, UConn reached the pinnacle. And then I think Mick Cronin's brought this team to the new age, which was NIL, because that team a couple of years ago was not that good. And how much of that was his fault? Lack of high school recruiting versus NIL. UCLA was not there with the NIL opportunities. And hey, the Bruins finding a way to get there. And I think Mick Cronin's found a way to move them forward.
Yeah, and is going to continue to need to do that. I think the dollars are there now, which he begged and pleaded for 2 years ago. It was. And Yox, honestly, I mean, part of it is how the crud, and not just for UCLA, but USC and Oregon and Washington too, are they going to be able to continue navigating a kind of bonkers conference schedule that you got to deal with? I would hate it, right? Like I as an athlete would have severe hesitation about going to play for one of those 4 schools, or Stanford or Cal, for example, too, in the ACC. And so I think that's part of it is how can UCLA sell UCLA and everything that brings, knowing the difficulty of looking back now. We have now the fortunate position of being able to look back at year 1 of that conference schedule and like, man, how was that going to play out in years 2 and 3 and beyond? That's going to be a very interesting storyline to watch.
Which is exactly what we're going to talk about next. The schedule for UCLA this year, which we know a little bit, last year's Big Ten travel. More on that next on this crossover edition of Locked On UCLA and Locked On College Basketball. Final segment, Locked On UCLA, Locked On College Basketball, Locked On CBB with Isaac Schade and Andy Patton and just about every guest they can find talking college basketball on that show. It's a great show. Check it out. Isaac also talks Locked On Tar Heels, and apparently it's not a lot of just Bill Belichick. It's all basketball, right? There's no there's no drama going on in North Carolina whatsoever. No drama. No drama. It's not like he complains about flights going across the country, the lack of support NIL-wise, hates the schedule, seeing the Statue of Liberty. That's not something Bill would complain about. That's something Mick's complained about in this first year of the Big Ten, where he said he's been to the Statue of Liberty 3 times or whatever the quote was in the span of a few weeks span. And then even in the NCAA tournament, instead of playing in Denver or the West Coast, I forget where the other West Coast regional was. It was either in Denver or somewhere else. They get shipped to Lexington to go play Tennessee in their SEC rivals' backyard. They weren't done any favors with the schedule. So naturally, the Bruins pulled out of the CBS Sports Classic. They have a very boring non-conference home slate until it's released. Last year, very boring. And that's kind of how college basketball's trended. Home slates are very boring until conference play. And UCLA has 3 interesting non-conference games against former conference rivals or West Coast teams on neutral sites. And then the first year of the Big Ten. And let's start last year with the Big Ten. I think Big Ten scheduling is stupid. This is where the Pac-12 and me, the Pac-10 and me is like, Thursday, Saturday, maybe a Wednesday, Saturday, Sunday. The Big Ten, it seems like they play 3 times a week. They don't. They play every 2 days. And they have this ridiculous scheduling motto or mantra where Michigan and Michigan State both come to Los Angeles to play UCLA USC. They're so far apart. And when they actually played those 2 LA schools, they make individual trips out west where I don't know why they wouldn't play both those teams back to back on the same trip and then do the same thing for UCLA and USC when they're going to an Iowa or wherever they're going to. I just don't understand it. I know TV makes a big thing. I know contracts are a big thing, but it could be a lot easier. I can understand where Mick Cronin's coming from. What about you?
Dude, it's because if we're going to do this, if we're going to have these bloated conferences, which is like, it's like you get what you asked for all of these people, like we've got to find a way to do it well. You know, that as you said, that old pack, it's weird to call it old, but that old Pac-12 scheduling model of the traveling partners and doing that right every Thursday, Saturday, whatever it was, or Thursday, Sunday, whatever. It just like, we need to find ways to maintain that always, right? I know there was a lot of that in the Big Ten scheduling last year, but it wasn't as consistent as the Pac-12 was. Now I know with the Pac-12, we had such a beautiful pairs and models and ways to do it, but the Big Ten needs to find ways to do that as well. Now, thankfully, you know, we already do know the Big Ten opponents and locations for next year. Obviously for UCLA, the home and away is going to be Oregon, USC, and Washington again. But, you know, you look at the away only games, Iowa, both Michigans, Minnesota, Ohio State, Penn State, and Wisconsin. And so it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those. So there's an odd number. So at least one of those is going to be a one-off trip. And we haven't seen, you know, the actual schedule itself hasn't been released yet. But I'm very curious to see, like, are we pairing up Michigan and Michigan State? Are we pairing up Ohio State and Penn State? What? And then of those other 3, Minnesota, Wisconsin, and Iowa, where's the one-off and what does that look like? Could we not maybe even just do something where Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, yes, it's 3 games and a longer trip, but could we just get all of those in one trip? That would even make some more sense to me.
And the thing is, we've been so stuck in our ways that January to March, at least recently, I know it was a little different in earlier college basketball, that it has to be conference play. Like, as soon as the new year hits, it is only conference play, any conference. I know we used to have our mid-major bracket busters. We used to have random non-conference matchups, which we still get from time to time in a January or a February. I think that's a lot more in women's college basketball than we do in the men's side. It's just, what if we scheduled some of those cupcake home games in the middle of the schedule and all that travel when you're in the winter, when, you know, there's a lot more traveling during Thanksgiving? Maybe you have some of those games. Obviously, it's a little tough because you wouldn't get the fan base support, but it'd be a lot easier for travel when a lot of these teams are going to the Bahamas, going to New York, going out of the country. Maybe not UCLA, because they're not going to New York anymore. They pulled out of the CBS Sports Classic. They'll go to San Francisco. They'll play a neutral site home game against Arizona and Los Angeles, and then go to Seattle. That's the extent of their travel in non-conference. Why not sprinkle that out instead of having half the schedule be no travel and then half the schedule be a lot of travel? That we should be able to figure this out, right? Why can't we be the czars?
Yes, absolutely. And I love your outside the box thinking, Yox. And that's what it's going to take. Is it can't just be in a new era with new schedules and new conferences. We can't just do things the same old way. So take advantage of downtime in the academic schedule. Take advantage of maybe, you know, UCLA is pulling out of the CBS Sports Classic this year, but maybe, and we don't know where it's going to be yet this year, but like, is that a permanent thing? Or maybe when it's back in Vegas again, for example, at T-Mobile, maybe UCLA is back in for that. That's something I'm curious to find out as well. But I think your point is so well made there. Like, we can't just continue to do the same things. That's got to change. We need some ingenuity, some fresh thinking with schedule making.
And what they've tried to do, which I've teased a little bit, they're neutral site games. Like, they're not playing Gonzaga at Gonzaga. They're going to Climate Pledge Arena. They're playing Arizona in Phoenix, and they're playing them in the Intuit Dome, which is a great arena. That's not Pauley Pavilion, and that's not the McHale Center. They're going to Cal to play in the home of the Warriors. Like, what? That just doesn't make any sense to me. I think they might sell out Cal, or they would have a lot of support if UCLA went to the Pavilion, but going to the home of the Warriors, that's not going to, knowing the Bay Area and the LA area, that's not going to drive an NBA filled arena's worth of attention. But a home site where we've transitioned away from home site games, I just think that's where we're losing interest in college basketball. I love those cupcake games because I love when a mid-major does upset a big school. I think that's good for college basketball. But the big games also need to be at the home and homes.
Yes. Neutral site games are fine and great, but I am always going to advocate for home games on campus sites. And we are seeing a lot more schools do that, schedule these home and home matchups where we'll come to you this year, you come to us next year. But some of them are legit campuses and some of them are semi-home and some of them, like I've also seen, excuse me, and I could get behind this. Who is it? Is it you guys in Arizona that's doing the 3 years in 4? Yeah, the 3 years in 4. 2 of them. No. You just said it. Yeah, it's at NBA arenas, and then the 4th year, the 3rd game is going to be in Las Vegas. I would like those kind of series where we do 2 legit home games with a neutral in between or something like that. I could get my mind wrapped around that a little more.
Well, UCLA should just play Arizona every year, but
yes.
We can't figure that out. We can barely figure out, if we're going to expand the tournament to 700 teams, which we shouldn't, nor 96, nor any number that involves a 7 as the starting number. 68, which might be 68 for a couple more years, who knows, should be the final number. So a lot of travel, a lot of Mick Cronin quotes. The seat, according to Isaac's, not warming. I've been, apparently, according to my fan base, a big hater on Mick Cronin, but he's clearly brought him into a new day and age, which makes it so tough just to compare him to Ben Howland, let alone the legacy that is John Wooden. And I think we both expect, Isaac, this team is going to be good this year. We don't know the ceiling if it can be reached to a Final Four, but we do think Cronin can get them to deep second weekend, and that's where you need like a buzzer-beating miracle shot of some sorts to make or break your hearts. And then travel should be figured out much easier than it is. All right. I think we solve college basketball. Why don't they just ask us more questions?
I think they should. We're here, NCAA. Come talk to us.
I mean, do we really want to talk to the NCAA though? They're going to cease to exist pretty soon. All right. So where can everybody find you, Isaac, before we wrap things up?
Man, I am most active at Isaac Schade on Twitter, but kind of all over I do stuff on all social media, but that's the one where I'm most active in doing stuff. So, and then obviously, as Yox has said, both on Locked On College Basketball and Locked On Tar Heels, we're talking about it all every day, just like Yox is doing his great job on Locked On UCLA.
Well, I appreciate it, Isaac. We'll certainly talk more college basketball and everything college sports, when you come on the show again, or I hop on your show. So make sure you check out both shows and both channels. We both would love to have them simultaneously on 2 tablets or phones or computers and put them on both. That's the best way to view. If it's a crossover, go to both channels and watch them both. So for Isaac, I'm Zach saying so long. Thanks for tuning in to this crossover edition of Locked On UCLA and Locked On College Basketball.